Hello and welcome to Cancer Out Loud, the CancerCare podcast. I'm Christina Monaco, an oncology social worker here at CancerCare. I'm joined today by Alexa Dashko, an oncology registered dietitian and board certified specialist in oncology nutrition. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Alexa.
Thank you for having me.
So, as we just jump right in, can you share a little bit about your background? What brought you to oncology nutrition, and what does your role look like?
So, I've been a dietitian for 6 years now. And like many other healthcare professionals, I came into this space looking for a role that would allow me to help others. Nutrition just worked out for me. And then, as far as oncology goes, I think I always felt called to this area of healthcare, but I have also had several family members go through the cancer journey. And so I'm familiar or was familiar with, the cancer journey from the caregiver and family side. And then learning the nuances and complexity of it from the healthcare side just was really intriguing to me. And so over the last 6 years, I've found a really nice home in oncology.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're mixing a lot of your personal experience with the passion of your professional experience. What makes oncology nutrition different from regular nutrition roles?
At the end of the day, healthcare professionals, we all abide by evidence-based or research-based practices. And so oncology is no different. Nutrition is no different. Everything that I recommend or do with patients is evidence-based or research-based. Um, and so even when you look at the difference between an inpatient setting or an outpatient setting, we still have very similar recommendations and interventions and practices. But I think oncology and more specifically the outpatient setting or the ambulatory setting, not in the hospital, the the unique part about it is just the relationship that you get to build. People are in the hospital, they might be there for a short period of time, or there's a very specific thing that we're trying to address. And when you look at the outpatient setting, which is where I am, I'm with patients from their time of diagnosis throughout their treatment and then even into what we will call for now survivorship, meaning post treatment. And so I get to develop these really long term um, relationships with patients and their families and their loved ones. And that's not something that I used to get when I worked inpatient. And so I really have the privilege of being with my patients long term and seeing them through the entire journey, which is awesome.
Seeing them through so much, you probably see them through like every emotional stage
Yeah.
too. What is that like to kind of partner the emotional aspect? Of course, food is tied to so many things. Like we hear food is love and food has to do with family and culture and background. So what is that like and how do you help be there with them in that?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a learning curve coming into this field. There's only so much you can learn by textbook. It's really the practice and experience of it. But I mean, there are so many emotions in the oncology space or in the cancer space, which we're all very familiar with. I don't have to tell any patient or any healthcare worker. There's a lot going on. We all know it. I think from my perspective, understanding how nutrition impacts the emotional and mental and psychosocial aspects of the individual and caregiver is a really unique space. And
Mm.
the better I understand it, the better my interventions or recommendations can be. Understanding that feeling depressed or overwhelmed or anxious is going to affect if someone's appetite. Feeling nauseous all the time can lead to me feeling down or sad or frustrated, and that can further impact appetite or intake or any aspect of it. Some people might find that foods don't taste the same or they don't have the desire to eat the same way that they used to. And so understanding the emotional tie to it and the mental tie to it makes it easier for me to say, okay, look, I totally hear their frustration. I totally hear your feelings and they're valid. Here are some things that we might be able to work on that might not fix or solve the problem altogether, but can definitely help us get through it a little easier, maybe a little less frustrating, maybe a little less defeating, so that we can get through this process and this part of the process and hopefully come back out on the other side and resume that kind of normalcy again.
What are some of the most typical things that you hear from a patient who is navigating this, especially in the beginning of a diagnosis when there's just so much being thrown at a person? They're getting so much information. What is most typical and how do you help guide them?
So It's funny, people either have 1,000 questions for me right off the bat, or they're on the last person on their to-do list, you know? Um, but I think really when people first come to me or when I first meet with patients, you know, their first concern is, what am I supposed to eat? What am I supposed to do? What specific diet am I supposed to have? And that's for a couple of reasons. One, you know, this is a really overwhelming process. I've already gotten a bunch of information from 20 other people. I'm assuming you're going to give me a bunch of information too. But also, food is one of the few things that we have control over, especially in the cancer journey. And so having the knowledge or the guidelines I need to have control over my intake is a big win, right? And so usually the first things that people ask when they first meet with them are, what am I supposed to have? What am I not supposed to have? And what should I expect? And then after those three questions, it's, well, can I eat X, Y, and Z? Or is this food bad? Or this is what I heard on the internet? Or this is what a family member told me? And so that's usually the cascade
Mhm.
of questions and concerns that I get.
I feel like on that note, there must be just so many like myths and misconceptions that you have to debunk constantly. What are some of those? Nutrition as a theory is an amazing resource for people to have in the cancer journey. And we are trying to grasp like just such tangible things. Like, what is real? Is sugar actually evil?
Yeah, yeah. I like right off the bat when I first meet with people, I'll ask them, "Have you heard anything? Are there any foods or nutrients you're concerned about, or that you've been told to avoid?" Sometimes people will say, "Yep," and they list me all the foods. And sometimes when they say no, I'm like, "All right, well, has anyone told you to avoid sugar? Has anyone told you to avoid dairy or red meat or gluten or avoid microwaves or to take vitamin C or turmeric or, you know, what have you?" And they're like, "Oh, wait, yeah, I have heard that." And so,
Mhm.
the most common myths that I hear are to avoid or cut out sugar. There's a belief that sugar feeds cancer, which is not true. To avoid dairy products, red meat, gluten products. Sometimes soy is thrown in there. A lot of people have been told to avoid microwaves. And then there's a large request for vitamins. People want to know, like, what vitamins can I take? What vitamins are going to help me? Is vitamin C going to help me? Is turmeric going to help me? Is soursop going to help me? And so, you know, right now, the foods that I listed, the soy, the gluten, the dairy, the red meat, the sugar, they don't feed cancer. That's the good news, is they don't feed cancer. They're not going to make your cancer worse. The more important thing to focus on is how overeating some foods might impact weight status, or they might impact, you know, your overall health. You know, we never want to tell people you should have 5 pounds of sugar every day, right? Like that's not helpful for us in general. So I would continue to give you that recommendation during your cancer journey, but I'm not going to tell you that you have to cut sugar out altogether. The real reason why we are sometimes concerned about sugar, especially in oncology, is that excessive sugar intake can increase weight status, and sometimes weight status can impact certain cancer diagnoses. It's really more the effects it has on hormones that affect your weight status, but it's not feeding your cancer. So I never want anyone to feel afraid to consume any particular food. With vitamins, there really isn't any one vitamin that we can say, yep, that's the one that's going to cure or fix the cancer, or there's no one vitamin that's going to make the cancer worse. There are some vitamins and minerals and herbs that can interact with treatment or chemotherapies. And so anytime that patients have an interest in taking a vitamin, supplement, a mineral, I'll tell them, please ask me first or ask the physician first, so that we can just double check it and make sure that it doesn't interact. As long as it doesn't interact, I really don't have an issue with you taking that product, but I want to make sure that it's not going to cause a problem for us first.
Just hearing it was a shock to me. So I can only imagine that it's a shock to so many of our listeners that like these things that we've kind of been taught or ingrained to be afraid of essentially are not actually things to be afraid of. But it sounds like it just speaks to a much larger picture, which is overall health and weight.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's unfortunate that there's just so much misinformation available, especially on the internet, especially through social media. All it takes is one person out there to say something, and people cling on to it, you know. And um, I think in nutrition, that's a really common issue, is people will hear one thing somewhere, and and they stick with it. Somehow sugar has been the myth that has traveled nationwide, probably internationally. But yeah, it's frustrating at times how much misinformation is out there.
And I feel like that kind of goes back to what you were saying before about control. Since there's so little control in a cancer journey, if we could say, okay, well, this must be the problem, I can blame this,
Yeah,
then that just makes it a little bit easier, a little bit more palatable, no pun intended, to kind of sit with, okay, there's something that must be causing this or something that's making it worse. If I can cut it out, that's like me doing my due diligence.
absolutely.
When in reality, it's a bigger picture.
Absolutely. A majority of the time, we don't know why cancer happens, and I think that's really frustrating, not only for healthcare providers, we also wish that we could say like, "Yep, that's it, let we can fix that problem," but especially for patients and their loved ones, not having a good reason or a blame or a an excuse, for lack of better words, that's frustrating. It already adds to an already frustrating process.
And kind of on this point of frustration, lack of control, we're having a conversation at a time when access to food resources are not necessarily guaranteed for everybody.
Yeah.
Can you just speak to how you've seen that in your world, how you might guide a person whose access is more limited than it might have been to healthy resources? How can they maintain it? I have all these questions, but I'll just let you kind of run with it.
Yeah, no, of course. First and foremost, what I tell all of my patients and their families, loved ones, caregivers, at the end of the day, fed is best, which is a term that we like to use, especially in pediatrics and with children, infants. The old debate of breast milk versus formula. Now we tell parents fed is best. And so when I meet with patients and clients, I tell them the same thing. I'm going to treat you like we would treat children, and I mean that in the most loving way possible. Fed is best. It will come to a point where I don't care what you eat as long as you are able to eat. That's the more important part here, right? And so when we look at, the food access part of this, fed's best is very easy to say until you no longer have access to be fed. And so anytime that we have patients or clients who are struggling with food insecurity or access to food, you know, the first thing that we have to do is figure out, well, what is the limiting factor? Is it the transportation? Is it the financial access? Are you in a food desert where there's literally nothing nearby? And then examine what kind of resources that we might be able to set you up with or connect you with. A month ago, I'd be able to say, all right, well, let's look into getting you set up with SNAP and with the EBT benefits. And obviously, right now, that's not my first go-to. But in my clinic in particular, we do have a list of nearby food banks, and soup kitchens that do help members in the community. There are several programs through insurance companies that will deliver meals to individuals. Usually it's just a matter of your physician, social worker, nurse navigator, dietitian, someone setting you up with that program. And usually it's just a matter of submitting, your insurance benefits as well. I would always encourage patients, if you have insurance, please call your insurance provider and ask them, like, hey, are there any food assistance programs that I am eligible for or that you are in network with that I can explore with my team? A lot of the big, we'll say, cancer groups, so American Cancer Society, Susan G. Komen, all these major groups typically have resources on their websites. And so I always encourage patients, we look at all of them all the time, but it's possible that we might have missed something or maybe we didn't know about an organization. So if you come across one and you find something, feel free to look into it, but also please ask us. We'll check into that too. If we can help in any way, we would love to. So yeah, it's frustrating right now with what's going on and having access, but also just, it's gonna sound silly, but just relying on community and loved ones. If you really are having a hard time, I very much realize and understand that it's not easy to ask for help, but there might be a day or two, couple days where you might need to ask for help. And so if we're not available or if we're looking for something for a resource and we don't quite have it yet, I would always encourage patients, if you can ask family members for some support right now, I still need to feed you. I still need you to be hydrated. I still need you to be fed. And so, if that's the most immediate resource or help that we can get you, I think we should try that.
Your job is so much more than like just the nutrition, just the diet. It also sounds like there's just a big level of advocacy in here also, and
Yeah.
just getting people connected and really being there, not just as a sounding board, but also as like a very practical. resource navigator almost.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think dietitians are often our role is often misunderstood in that, like, oh, they just tell you what to eat, and we really do so much more than that.
And I'll take this opportunity also to just plug CancerCare's financial assistance program that is
Yes,
available
yes, I even missed
nationally.
that.
That that is available, and that's another place of access where we can help connect to financial assistance through us in a limited capacity or to help find other resources as well. We're hoping soon to roll out one that's more specific to food insecurity. So this podcast is coming at a good time where this conversation is just so prevalent. And now that the holidays are coming up, we see a lot of, well, food is everywhere. It's food, it's alcohol, it's all these things that people with cancer might not be able to eat, might not feel comfortable consuming. How do you help a patient navigate conversations with their loved ones when Christmas dinner table might be eat, 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 and it
Oh,
just
yeah.
isn't feasible?
I think I've had this conversation at least 5 times this week alone, with Thanksgiving coming up,
Mhm.
and we're still 3 weeks out from the holiday, so, I'm sure I'll have this conversation many more times in the upcoming days. Even without a holiday, family members are very quick to be like, "You have to eat. You have to eat everything. We need to feed you," which is wonderful and beautiful, and I'm so happy when my patients tell me that, my family members or my loved ones care enough about me that they want me to eat everything in sight and to gain weight or to not lose weight. But that's always followed with, but, I am really that's really frustrating, or that doesn't help me, or that's actually just making me more anxious or more overwhelmed. I don't feel well, or I don't know how I'm gonna feel when treatment starts, or I have an appetite, I wanna eat, but I don't feel well, or food doesn't taste the same, or I'm too tired, I'm exhausted, I have fatigue. And so when we examine, all right, well, like, how do we take that into consideration? How do we address that problem and also address the incoming advice, for lack of better words, without, rejecting that person or that resource? Like, how do we navigate that? And so a lot of times what I tell patients is, first and foremost, you need to set your boundary. It's your health, it's your life, it's your experience. I know that your loved ones have the best of intentions, but they're not going through this process. You are, right? And so, how can you say, I really appreciate your help or your advice, but I don't feel well right now, and that's actually not helping me. I'll tell patients, you can say it just like that. We can get on the phone together if you want. I will call your family members with you and kind of explain to them like my perspective of it. When they're giving you advice, you can tell them, I so appreciate your concern and you wanting to help, but I'm actually working with my medical team and my dietitian to find a plan that's right for me. Or I'm working with the dietitian and I have a good grasp of what foods I can and cannot have. Or I am experiencing a lot of side effects, so I don't feel comfortable trying out these new foods or this new meal pattern or this new supplement that you're recommending. When it comes down to side effects, feeling nauseous, feeling fatigued, maybe having some belly issues going on, you can really just tell your family members, hey, I'm having a really tough time and this holiday party is not where I want to risk experiencing that side effect, right? I don't want to go to a holiday party and potentially become sick or potentially have to spend the rest of the night in the bathroom or have to leave early and feel like I missed out. I don't want people to look at me, right? Maybe I don't have hair. Maybe I look ill. Maybe I look like I lost weight. I don't want to receive that feedback or those comments or those looks. And so, you know what? I think I would rather just be home this year. But maybe we can find a time for you to come over. Maybe we can find a time to have a smaller gathering. Maybe like you and two friends or you and two family members want to come over. You can tell them or tell loved ones and family members, I'm having a hard time eating. These are the foods I know I can eat. So if you want to come by with those foods, I would be happy to have you. Or, I'm not sure if I should be drinking right now. I'm going to come by, but I'm going to bring this non-alcoholic wine, or I'm going to bring this juice. And I hope you're okay with me leaving that in the fridge just for me, if you don't mind others not drinking that because I really can't drink anything else. Sometimes when patients are on treatment, depending on their treatment schedule, maybe they have a week off, maybe they just finished, they might be able to have a drink. I always tell patients, I don't think it would be a problem in the setting, but let's check with the doctor first because I would rather your physician confirm that you can or cannot have a beverage. And especially with the holidays coming up, I would always encourage people talk to your doctor. Just make sure you are allowed to have one, or maybe it's not a good week for you to try that out. But to wrap that up, it really comes down to setting boundaries. It's not always comfortable. I think the more we do it, the better we get at it. Again, I always tell people I'm happy to practice this with you. I'm happy to call your family members or loved ones with you and explain, the reasoning behind this. But you have to set your boundary and do what's best for you. And so right now, if avoiding foods, if avoiding people, if avoiding holiday parties is best, great. If only eating certain foods is best for you, great. Let's set that boundary.
I really appreciate you giving all of those different insights. I think that you gave a lot of language that's really helpful to people who don't necessarily feel comfortable setting those boundaries. You also really brought in the fact that it is such a communal effort. Diet is so personal, but eating and celebration and culture is a really communal effort.
Yeah.
And you brought in like the body image and weight loss. And I feel like there are just so many ways that we could go, but I'm kind of going to follow the like body image path that aligns with community. I'm sure you hear a lot. So and so said that I look great because I'm losing weight, but that's not how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Say some more about that.
Yeah, that one's frustrating. I'll be honest with you, in the moment, I've gotten better, but internally, I think I might be more frustrated than the patient when I hear that comment. This is not the time for unintentional weight loss, you know? It's never the time for unintentional weight loss, but definitely not during our cancer journey. A lot of my patients will receive and tell me that they receive feedback about their weight, good or bad, whether they're gaining or losing. Another really common thing or like comment that my patients tell me that they hear is people said I don't look sick. I'm like, well, do you feel sick? And they're like, yeah, this is awful. I'm hating this experience,
Mhm.
right? Because who would enjoy this? Um, and so it's like, all right, yeah, no, that's valid. When people are gaining weight, a lot of times it's because of the treatment regimen. We might have you on steroids, we might have you onto certain medications that cause weight gain. That is really frustrating, especially in our society and culture where we are so weight conscious. And so a lot of my patients will ask me, like, how can I lose weight? And I tell them, I hear you, I get it. Right now, I would feel more comfortable with working to keep your weight stable. I don't want you to necessarily gain or lose weight. I kind of want to keep you where you are if we can. And then once we're done with this process or this part of treatment, we can work towards weight loss. But I don't want you to potentially lose weight and have any kind of like treatment related side effects or, if you lose too much weight, then that can affect the dosing and treatment regimen. I don't want you to lose weight too quickly or too much, and then you have stronger side effects. So there's a lot that goes into weight. Similarly, when people are losing weight and people tell them like, "Oh, you look great," and they're like, "I don't feel great." It's a matter. I tell them, it's a matter of saying like, I so appreciate your comment. I'm having a really difficult time, and so I'd actually prefer not to be losing weight right now, but. I'm working with my dietitian. I'm working with my medical team to see if we can get my weight under control or to keep it more stable, but I really appreciate your feedback. And, I'd really appreciate if you didn't comment on my weight going forward. This is a really difficult time. I would really appreciate it if you didn't comment on my weight, if you didn't comment on my appearance. Again, it comes down to setting boundaries. And I realize that that's difficult, especially with loved ones and family
Mhm.
members, but it really does come down to setting boundaries. And then, the comment of, but you don't look sick. I tell patients, be honest with people. Be honest. You can tell them thanks. I'm glad I don't look sick, but I feel sick. Treatment is not a fun process, or I'm having a really difficult time with treatment. So again, I appreciate hearing that I look okay, but I'd prefer if we didn't talk about this going forward. It would be really helpful if we didn't address my appearance. Sometimes people will say that not knowing that that person or that patient just spent an hour putting themselves together, wanting to not look sick, but they don't feel good. We did that because we didn't feel good. Um, at the end of the day, I always advise people, if you can just ask family members, loved ones, please don't comment on my appearance. I'd really appreciate that. That's probably the easiest way to address it without having to repeat yourself so many times. It's a frustrating part of the process. I think it's one that we don't necessarily think about when we first enter the oncology space or when people first get diagnosed. We don't think about our appearance in it.
And You really validated that that's not an easy thing to do, to set boundaries. But I also think that the reframe is that it's such an opportunity to, like, be authentically yourself and invite your community to support you in the way that you had said earlier, like, rely on your loved ones. Those are the people who care for you, and so setting the boundaries might be scary, and it's an opportunity to really kind of let them into your inner circle and behind the scenes of, "This is what's going on, this is the support that I need at this time."
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of what we've spoken about and even just saying that is making me think of isolation and how what an isolating experience it must be navigating not just cancer, but also navigating a world where you sit at a dinner table might feel a little bit differently, or you try to remain social and going to a restaurant feels different or tastes different. How would you encourage people who want to continue to engage in community, engage in life and food and eating in this way to do it without betraying their own boundaries while also, like, incorporating themselves? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. How do you stay connected without neglecting your needs and your boundaries?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So for first and foremost, again, comes back down to the boundaries and recognizing what those boundaries need to be, what they are, how do we establish them? So a common example that I can give, and one that I've actually been working on with a couple of patients recently, is um, only being able to eat a little bit at a time. Whether they get full really quickly, whether they get sick if they eat too much, whether we're just having, sometimes it's after a surgery you can only eat so much. So there's a whole variety of reasons why someone might not be able to eat a normal meal, right? And by by this I mean, like, some of my patients are only able to take a couple of bites at a time, and they're like, "I'm done. I'm
Okay.
done. I had 5 bites. I'm done." But I still want to have dinner with my family. I still want to go out with friends. I still want to attend the holiday party. I still want to be invited to do these things. But my meal doesn't look like their meal anymore. And so first and foremost, again, establishing the boundary of, like, hey, to loved ones, caregivers, family members, I really appreciate you wanting to feed me. I physically, mentally, emotionally cannot have the same meal as you. So I'm telling you that this is what I can tolerate. This is what I can have. And I would really appreciate if you respect that and work with me so that I can continue to have meals with you. Right. And then, second part of that, or following up on that, is asking family members, loved ones, caregivers, friends, hey, would you be willing to, like, maybe do this with me sometimes? Like, when I see you, would you be willing to have kind of like this? I joke around with my patients, like, it's just like tapas style. We're just having these small meals. We're just doing this
I
is
love
just
it.
oncology tapas. So would you be willing to have that with me when you visit, or when I visit, or when I'm with you? I'm not saying that this is always a great tool, but for some of my patients, using humor and dark humor can be helpful. And so, sometimes my patients will joke around and we'll come up with the rule of, like, I'm just gonna tell my kids, my so and so, my friends, just eat before you see me. So then when you see me, you're already full and you can have these small snacks, right? You can use humor if that's helpful for you. But so going back to that example, I have a couple of patients who can only have a couple of bites at a time. And so one of the things that we work on is how to educate our family, our loved ones, our caregivers of, like, this is all I can tolerate, and I need you to respect that. And so one of the things that I like to explain, and usually when I explain it, patients are like, having like the wide eye of, like, oh my God, you get it. If you eat too much and then you feel sick, or you get sick, or you're uncomfortable, then that leads to you feeling defeated and upset that you didn't eat as much as you were told to, or as much food that was on the plate, or your family members are now telling you that, why didn't you eat enough? And it just leads to this very negative spiral effect. We continue this cycle every meal, every day, whatever. And so, what I tell patients and their loved ones when I get to talk to them is, this is going to sound silly, but I intentionally want you to eat less. If you know you can only tolerate 6 bites, I want you to have 4 or 5, and I want you to walk away. I only want you to put enough for 4 or 6 bites on your plate. If you see less food, it's less overwhelming, right? You feel a little more positive already coming to the meal. You're going to have your 4 or 6 bites. You're going to feel physically okay. and then you're going to walk away. And in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is, you still feel okay and you want to come back for more, let's do it. But you're going to do the same thing. You're only going to put enough for a couple of bites on that plate and then walk away. Again, oncology tapas.
And
The
then they feel
reason,
accomplished too. You
exactly,
could
the
check off,
reason,
I ate what I intended to eat by putting that much on my plate.
absolutely, we want to create a more positive experience so that we feel encouraged and empowered to come back and do it again, right? Because if I make you eat a full meal and then you feel awful or you feel sick or you get sick, you don't want to come back to the next meal. Why would you? You already know what's going to happen. I know I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I know I'm going to get sick. Why would I set you up for that kind of failure? Right. And so educating patients on like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Let's educate your caregivers, your family members, your loved ones on that method so that by the end of the day, you actually took in more. You were able to eat more because we followed this couple bite method versus you eating, getting sick, and then not wanting to eat for the rest of the day, then that affects or impacts, improves our weight, improves our status, improves how we feel emotionally and mentally, right? I have a more positive experience. I'm more excited to try my meals. It gets you engaged with more activities and events with these family members and loved ones, right? If I had a good experience, now I'm more willing to go to breakfast with you and only have a couple of bites. I'm more willing to go to dinner. I'm more willing to have people over. It just creates a more positive experience in the entire picture of eating, right? It's not just dinner at home. It's every aspect of eating. So that's a really common issue and method that I like to use. I've had pretty decent success with it. It doesn't work for everyone, but it does work a lot of the time. And so I always encourage patients, let's try something out. And if it doesn't work, back to the drawing board. But if it does work, great. We had some success somewhere.
There you go, perfect, stick with it. I love that idea of tapas. It's so attainable. That's something normal. You hear that all the time. Why wouldn't we do that? That's not something that makes you feel isolated or different. That's how we're approaching it.
Yeah.
I've said the word culture a couple of times, but I'm thinking about moderation, but then also the type of food. Really, I'm envisioning like my household, a lot of white rice, a lot of fried foods, maybe not things that we would consider like the most healthy. How do you navigate different cultures who have different relationships to food, different food styles, things like that in within this framework?
Yeah. That's a really great question. And truthfully, it's something that I do feel very strongly about when I work with patients is making sure that we are abiding by their cultural preferences, whether that's religious, ethnic culture. The more comfortable you are with something, the more realistic you are to stick with it, right? And so anytime that we're adjusting food preferences, intake, meal patterns, the more comfortable you are with it, the more realistic it will be for you. And so, especially when I'm working with um, different cultural groups, I do like to ask patients, you can walk me through it. What is a normal meal for you? What is a normal day to day for you? Working in one facility, you tend to become more familiar with your common ethnic populations, right? I work with a large Hispanic population and a large Arabic population. And so I have become more familiar with their different food cultures. But sometimes I get a patient from somewhere else and I'm not familiar with that food culture. And so, I'll always ask people or tell them, I'm sorry, I'm actually not familiar with your typical meals. Would you be okay with telling me a little bit more about that? And, after we meet, I'm going to go do a little research so I can become more familiar with it. But just for now, would you mind talking me through like what is a normal meal for you? What kind of foods do you prefer to eat? Not prefer to eat. Are there any foods that you can't eat, right? Whether it's religious or culturally, inappropriate. I don't want to make recommendations that don't fit your needs.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to is I want to make sure that I'm making recommendations that are realistic and feasible for you. Because if they're not, then neither of us are winning in this scenario. So really just making sure that I understand your preferences and what's important to you will guide us through this, right? And so again, like I said earlier, nutrition recommendations are all based off of evidence and research, right? And so there's no research saying that Hispanic rice is different from Italian rice, from Indian rice. It's rice is rice, right? It might be cooked or looked a little different, taste a little different, but the actual nutrition component of it is the same. And so as long as I know what your preferences are, I can make my nutrition recommendations or my interventions fit for you. I just need to know what foods you like or don't like, or can eat or can't eat. And, I always tell patients, the more open or honest you are with me, or maybe the stricter you are with me is sometimes a better phrase, right? Like, I am willing to eat this. I am not willing to eat that. Okay, heard. Cool. I'm not going to make those recommendations. I'm not even going to try because I know it's not going to work for you. But yeah, the more open, honest, strict you are with me, the better I can tailor my recommendations to meet your needs. And if you feel comfortable with those recommendations, if you feel comfortable with those interventions, it's going to set you up for more success than me telling you, well, you should only eat this
Right, if
very
you could only
lesser
have
thing.
salad, that's,
Yeah, like,
they're not gonna come back to you, they're not gonna stick to it. I feel like so much of this also is just, like, them feeling heard is gonna boost their confidence, their relationship with you. Because also we're talking about when you're losing your ability to eat in the way that you used to be able to, I'm imagining that there's just such an element of grief in it too that you're there with them in.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like, oh, I really love my mom's cooking, but I just can't eat it right now. Nothing's appealing. Sometimes it's the internet said to do this, but I don't I don't do that normally. I'm like, well, good. I don't want you to do that. Like, that's internet isn't always right. I'm not always right, but I'm willing to work with you to find something that is right. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a grief component to the nutrition aspect of treatment. Not being able to eat certain foods, whether it's from side effects or maybe surgical procedures or maybe tumor size might be impacting intake sometimes. There can be a very emotional component behind, I can't eat the way I used to.
I can't eat the way I used to, I don't necessarily look the way that I used to, and all of these things are playing together. And it sounds like in that, though, there is still such an element of hope in working with an oncology specific dietitian who's able to say, we can keep these elements of what you did enjoy, of what you do enjoy, and really be able to work together to advocate for yourself, setting those boundaries, find ways that you can continue to little by little eat what you still like. You don't have to totally give up the things that you love, and also just having somebody there who understands, and it sounds like one of your major just, like, strengths in what you do is that you leave your clients feeling really heard, and that's
Hope so.
huge.
I hope so. I have heard good feedback, but
Okay.
um, I do hope so. Yeah. I
We
mean,
trust it.
yeah. I, again, you know, I think I've said it earlier, but the closer to your normal that I can keep you, that I can help you follow, the more realistic and successful this process will be for you. I never really want to change people's eating patterns or habits or food preferences. If I do have to change them, like, how little can I change them so that it's still meeting your needs and also meeting the medical component of the needs. There's already so much change going on in the cancer journey. I don't want to have to add more if I can avoid it.
What is one thing you wish every single one of your clients or every single patient out there knew or could internalize about nutrition, healing, this journey?
Big
I know
question.
that's a very loaded question. You could
um,
take a second.
I have been thinking about this too. This one might be a bit of a combo here, but no two patients are going to have the same cancer journey, the same experience, whether that's from treatment side effects, eating experiences, support experiences. No two people are going to have the same experience, and so the first thing I want to tell people is you're going to hear a lot of people come out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, my so and so," or "This is my experience," or "Ba ba 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 ba." Tune it out. Tune it out because you're going to have a different experience. You might have similarities, but your experience is your own. And while that is maybe scary or overwhelming to hear, like, no one's had the same experience as me, it's also a privilege, right? Just because you've heard these awful things doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the same awful things. And so there is a benefit to that. With that being said, because your experience is your own, you get to set your own boundaries. You get to set your own meal patterns. You get to work with your own medical team and your own support team, including dietitians, social workers, and the other support staff, to make this journey your own and to get you through this journey as best as we possibly can. And so learning to set boundaries, asking for help to set boundaries, those are the most important things, I think, in in the process of the cancer journey. And lastly, at the end of the day, eat what you want. Because again, fed is best. I don't care. Eat whatever you want. If Ben and Jerry's gets you through this process, good on them.
And sometimes you just gotta turn to what you can turn to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that, and I know we've touched on so many things in this 45 minutes that we've spent together. Is there anything else that I didn't ask about your work or about what you see and experience in your field that you think was important for listeners to hear or to know?
I think the one thing I would add, most cancer centers will have a dietitian available. I I don't know how accessible dietitians are in every cancer center. I can only speak for my own, but I would always encourage people, if you have nutrition questions, whether it's you, your family members, your caregiver, if you haven't met with the dietitian already, ask your physician, ask your nurse navigator, ask your infusion nurse, is there a dietitian available that I can speak with? I have a couple of questions. If there isn't one available, could you tell me how to get connected or where I can find someone? I can also give you a website where you can search for registered dietitians in your area. So if for some reason your facility doesn't have a dietitian available, you can find one on your own.
Yeah, if you wanna plug that website, if it's free, plug it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's eatright.org. So eat, EAT, right, RIGHT.org. And in the top right corner, you're going to see a little search bar that says find a dietitian near me. You're going to click on that and plug in your zip code, and it will pull up all the dietitians near you. You can start to filter based on insurance and all those other things. But I would always encourage people, speak with a dietitian before you go Googling for nutrition advice, because there's so much misinformation out there. And I would hate to see anyone struggle or have worse symptoms or experiences and not have the access to support that is available. So that's really the one thing I would add is always ask to speak with a dietitian. And if you don't have one in your facility, find one. Eatright.org.
That's awesome. Thank you. It sounds like it's just so additive to the journey that it really is an important resource. And I know, Alexa, you have been also involved in Cancer Care's coping circles, educational workshops. Cancer Care also has fact sheets and other information about nutrition. So the resources are definitely out there. I so appreciate spending this time with you. Thank you for coming on. It's such an important topic. And thanks, Alexa.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to share.
Thanks for tuning in to Cancer Out Loud, the Cancer Care podcast. Cancer Care is the leading national nonprofit organization providing free professional support services, including resource navigation, cancer-focused counseling, support groups, educational resources, and financial assistance to anyone affected by cancer. You can visit us online at cancercare.org or call our toll-free Hope line at 1-800-813-HOPE. That's 1-800-813-4673 to speak with an oncology social worker or Hope Line specialist.